Yeah. So I have a PhD in molecular biology and genetics, and I have like over 5 years of experience as a postdoctoral fellow in different universities in the US. So what started as leading a toxic lab actually continued through immigration issues, then my pregnancy, and then childcare. And before I realized, it's like been 3 years. And this is not what I intended to do, but it just happened. And then the pandemic came in. So right now I'm trying to get back to the workforce. And I quickly see that there aren't many examples, or there aren't many people to whom I can lean in, or probably I haven't found out. That could be a reason as well. So I thought this would be a session that would help many people like me who are trying to get back to full-time work, or get back to a career that they always wanted to. So that is why we have this session on how to resume after a career break. And I have three wonderful panelists who have agreed to talk about their experience, also answer some of our questions. So thank you for all three of you for accepting to do this. And let me quickly introduce them, and then I'll switch over to them so they can explain better. So we have Dr. Rajamani Selvam. She has a PhD from University of Connecticut Health, and she's currently a data curator for Regeneron. Thank you, Rajamani, for joining us. And we have Dr. Priyanka Guru. She has a PhD from Savitribai Phule Pune University, and she was a director for Mokusai Intelligence Private Limited, and also an assistant professor at Dr. D.Y. Patel Biotechnology and Bioinformatics Institute. And she's actually joining us from India, which is like 9:30 p.m. now. So I really appreciate that you're joining us this late, and thank you so much. And we also have Dr. Mangala Lakshmi Subramanian. She goes by Ramya Subramanian as well. And she has a PhD from Calicut University and is currently a data scientist at Rancho Biosciences. So one thing all of these three panelists have in common is that they've taken a break and come back with a full bang. So I am really expecting that I could get some of my questions and some of our questions answered, and also get to listen their challenges, what they did, and what they wish other people might know when they're going through this phase of their life. So thank you so much again for all of you for joining this, and also a special thanks to all the panelists who have agreed to do this. Thank you so much. So maybe if you can explain, or if you want to share a few words about your break, or what you're doing right now, or anything in general, that would be great. So Dr. Rajamani, do you want to go first? She's first on the list, so I thought I'll just...
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
So as Shiva mentioned, I'm currently at Regeneron as a data curator. Started this position in last June. So I have had 2 breaks since my PhD. So my first break was right after my PhD. So I did my PhD, or I graduated from my PhD in September 2018. And immigration was my biggest trouble. That's where my career break actually started. One of the reasons I didn't talk about it much was because of all the, a lot of people don't understand how immigration works. And especially coming from a university who deal with a lot of F1 students, I was expecting my OPT to go smooth. But I had a immigration advisor who was totally reluctant on doing things. So until my public defense was done, my application did not even go to USCIS because she did not sign up my paper. She had my papers for 8 weeks. So those of you who are doing F1 OPT in US know how simple the form is, how long it takes to finish the form. So there's just one thing that she has to sign up, but she holded on the paper for 6 weeks. And I tried to push it through my advisor, my committee members, and everybody went hands off. They were like, oh, I don't know what to do here. I don't know this visa situation. No, you have to figure it out. And then I finally went and nudged a professor in my department who's like this person who can twist everybody's hand. And when I went and asked him, can you help me with this? Because, my career is dependent on it. As a fresh graduate, if I have a career break, people are going to ask why, and I cannot say immigration as an issue. So can you help me out with? And he said like, oh, which state are you from in India? And then when I said like, oh, I'm from, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. And then he goes like, I heard that she helps people only from Bombay. So that was the answer, and that was end of it. Like there were no more questions asked, like nobody was ready to help. So I know I was going to spiral down that road of having a break. So I was mentally prepared, and I was very much in agony at that point, because obviously, like, you think that your advisor would help you with a job. Here he's not even helping you with a to get a paper signed. So I finished my thesis in about like June of 2018. But I stayed for a little longer trying to figure out this stuff. It wasn't happening, and I was getting frustrated. And then I said, like, my husband, I'm going to be like, out of job for some time. So why do I have to waste it? Because I was in a long distance at that point. So I said, like, I'm going to move to Maryland. We will figure out things when we come there. So I pushed on my public defense, and then that was the starting point when USCS started delaying applications. So F1 OPT took about like 4 to 5 months at that time. Before, it used to be like within 90 days, you'll get your OPT card. So I did get mine in around December, end of December, and that's exactly when Government Shutdown Act happened. So I did have a postdoc offer from FDA at that point, and they were willing to like hire me. And then government shutdown happened. So FDA is like, government agency, and you need all the fingerprinting and everything done. So I started my job on the 90th day of unemployment of OPT. So it was like really stressful. Like the last day of unemployment is when I actually stepped into the office, and people there were helpful. They were like, oh, no, what you need to get in, come here. You don't even have to work, but just get the start date on the paper and you just come in. So that was my first career break. And it was like a 6-7 months of, pure stress at that point. And then moving on to my postdoc, 3 months into the postdoc, I found out that I was pregnant. And just like in any academic lab, I was like freaking out at that point. Will I lose the job again? Will I be out of visa again? So one thing that I did was I changed to H4, because we did not want my job to be like a stress on pregnancy. So I did change, and that's also when the USCA started delaying all the H4 EAD processes. So my second break was maybe like it continued for like last year, maybe like early last year. I was out of job, or I was on payroll, because I technically can be on a payroll, but I don't get paid until I get my EAD card. So I was there for like 5-6 months. And by the time my advisor was getting pissed off at me that I'm not coming back to work, it's been too long of a gap. So she was like, find another job or come back. And at that point, I decided it was not worth having any fight with her. So that's when I started looking up for jobs. And this one actually came through a recruiter. And then I joined Regeneron from that point. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Thank you, Rajamani. I think the immigration is a huge problem here. I always feel like they should have international people on the immigration, the human resources, or, the international relations or anything, because I've always had this thing. Like, you try to go and tell them in advance, and they're like, you can, like, it's fine, you can do it. And then when you go there, they like miss, like an important information or something. And then like I think they just don't realize how hard it is for an immigrant to be here, and like be in a limbo whether it's going to be done or not. So yeah, that's kind of
So my human resources was a Indian person who has been like
oh,
for a
sorry.
but yeah,
Okay.
as I said, like I had other graduate students pass, and I saw them get jobs, which is even more frustrating, because they graduated after you for 3-4 months. And here they are like posting all their industry transitions everywhere. And here you're trying to figure out when you will get your OPT card. I mean, just like, at that point, it's a partiality, but nobody cares because it's within Indian population at that point here. That's how US people see it. So yeah.
I always thought it would be better if it was an international person, but clearly it isn't. So yeah, but yeah, great, great comeback both the times, I guess. And okay, Dr. Priyanka Guru, do you want to go next?
I think there's a question for Rajamani.
Yeah, I'll just answer it on the chat, Priyanka. You can go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I actually completed my PhD in 2015, and I was in process of applying for postdoc. I did it from Pune University, as it was formerly known as. And while applying for postdoc, and my defense was scheduled for December, So I had lined up few interviews and things like that. And when I gave my defense is when I had started vomiting and people had doubt. I went and checked. So it turned out I was pregnant. So I thought it was stress. And I was like, no, it is not that. It is just stress and me stressing over that defense. And the pregnancy, we said we'll give it 2-3 months, maybe the morning sickness will go. But I had issues the entire 9 months. So I couldn't really think of any job. So I had to put everything on hold. And at that time, I did have an offer of postdoc, but I again said, not right now, I'm not able to work. And after that, once the baby was born, I was like, I want to be with the baby for like a year or two minimum. And things changed when my husband's job got a bit dicey. His company was taken over by another company, so they were laying off people. And so it was a bit stressful that, he could get laid out any minute. And it was then me, and I'm just sitting at home with a PhD doing nothing. I did a lot of freelance work in between, like teaching and things like you do it when you get time, not really a schedule kind of work. So that's when I actually started looking for a job. And I don't know, it was luck at that moment or I had to join in. So I did get 3 interviews lined up. So I shifted my focus from postdoc because I saw it was difficult getting any, with the gap, it was difficult for me to get any postdoc positive reply. So I was getting rejections. I changed my tactics and I was applying for postdocs abroad. I was in India and every PhD in India has the dream to go do a postdoc abroad. And so I saw it wasn't working and I started applying for jobs in industry everywhere, like wherever the PhD would fit. I was like, anything at this point, and then I'll see about a postdoc. And I think at the same time, I got positive replies from one is an industry, then academia and scientific writing, and another IT related work for a PhD life science person. So I picked up academia and I joined in as an assistant professor. The private institutes here in India, they are not too strict, like you need to have a postdoc experience and all. So it was easy to get in. So I worked there for 3 years. And last year, actually, I had some health issues. I had a stroke. So I had to again quit the academic and get back to working at home. I'm right now at that point, actually, when I was an assistant professor, I had joined this other company also. We had started up with a friend of mine, Moxa Intelligence. It's basically related to education and developing an app for education. So I was with that. So once I quit my job as an assistant professor, I continued working on that, not full-fledgedly, but I was more on recovery mode. But now again, I will be getting back. So I will be starting the job hunt and everything again very soon. So either job hunt or starting something of my own. Yeah, so that was this.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff you've been doing, right? And starting something new is not that easy. So yeah, kudos for you. And Dr. Ramya Subramanian, would you like to go next?
Sorry, I was on mute. So hi, and it was very nice to hear Rajamani and Priyanka. So my side of the story is somewhat different in both aspects. So I did my PhD in 2002 from Calicut University. And 1 week after my thesis submission, I got married. And my husband was working in the US. I was trying for a postdoc. Even before that, I had been applying. So not in the US, but it wasn't planned in any such way. In fact, looking back, there were questions about, you're just finishing your PhD, you're going to the US, and these visa issues and all these issues. Wouldn't it be just better that you continued here, in India, where you could continue with your, but those, I think I could say in those days, because I think it's like a generation away. But, life took priorities, and, we didn't plan things that way as things are planned right now. Like, marriages are planned around career and so many different things. So we got married. I came to the US in October 2002, and I had no clue about what my next step was going to be. And I've always been kind of like that, like just be in the moment and do what works for you at that time, at that point. So, so to give you a small background, so I actually started with zoology, then moved on to entomology, then to insect biochemistry, and I was trying to make my way towards molecular biology. So when I landed in the US, I was looking at some kind of an opportunity where I could just work, in a molecular biology lab and learn some things and then see what next, in that kind of a mode. So I started calling a bunch of people, and in BU, they had, so my PhD thesis was on aging mechanisms. So I saw an, postdoctoral fellowship program for aging, and I was so naive about visas, or, I had absolutely no clue about what H1 or H4 or any of those things meant. So I just picked up the phone and, just spoke to a professor saying, I'm interested in this fellowship, what should I do to kind of, so he said, oh, this is for US citizens, for PRs. And I knew I was neither of that, but I didn't know what my status was. So I just said, I don't think I'm allowed to work, but do you think I can just come by and meet you and just, I'm in a learning mode. So I'm willing to kind of just come to the lab and work with a team. And I could afford that, when you're young, no kids, and your husband's working especially. So I was in that mode. So that way, I think I was lucky. So uh, he was a sweet guy. He said he offered me, he offered to meet with me and also introduce me to another professor who kind of just interviewed me a little bit. And he said, you're welcome to come and work with us. Like, so why I say this is because, they were clueless about immigration policies, or they were clueless about, the hiring process, or, these are not Indians and they have absolutely no idea. So they were asking me, oh, you're not allowed to work? Why not? So I said, I just know that I need a special kind of a visa, and that's about it. So they said, you can kind of work in this project. We may not pay you, but, let me figure out. And so that figuring out process happened for 2-3 months, I guess. I don't know what they did. I started going to this lab. Like, I would go to my PhD lab, like morning, I would just go there, I would be with them, and they would train me on all the different techniques, and I got involved into a project. At the end of 2 months, he came and said, I'm sponsoring your visa. And I got an H1. And I remember coming back home and telling my husband that they said they're doing something about my visa, but I don't know what exactly that is. So I was in that state. And so my husband was like, I don't think it's an H1. It's very hard to get an H1. So I went back the next day, checked, and I said, oh no, this is an H1. And so it came so, where it was least expected. So that part, when I look back now, I understand the value of it. I didn't at that point in time. So I got my H1 and I started working for them as a postdoctoral associate. And I worked for 6 years. And yeah, a 7th year, I got pregnant, and I thought I would be able to manage. After the pregnancy, I took time off, and my professor was so wonderful at the time. I think his funding had come down, so the entire lab had been let go, and I was like the single person doing everything needed. Starting from the lab manager to grant proposals. Like, I was the one-man show running the lab. So and he was a very good professor who gave me that flexibility. And he said, you work your time. Like, if you're pregnant towards, maternity leave, you're taking 6 months off, that's all fine. So I got that much of flexibility, and yet I was unable to part with my 9-month child and come to the lab, and I felt I wasn't doing justice to either. I would come at 10, 11 in the morning, and then I would be off by 3. So I wasn't getting any work done, and that bothered me. And I was not able to focus on my child. So I didn't, somehow I was not able to leave her in daycare. That was my own mental, stress. So I made a choice that I really want to enjoy motherhood. Um, and despite him giving me an option of taking a year off and coming back, I just said, I don't want to, commit to something that I don't know where 1 year from now, what's going to happen. So I just left my job. So I thought I'll take a couple of years with my daughter, my eldest one, and I'll be back in some other form. So, but that extended to almost 3-4 years. And the 4th year, I got pregnant again. And then I said, oh, this one's going to be like, I've already had my time with the eldest one, so I know how it's going to be. So maybe a year after that, 6 years, I'll be back. And believe me, the second one was completely different. So I ended up extending that. I never had a plan to, like a set plan, like, oh, I'll take 2 years off, then I'll be back, or 3 years. I just went with what was, how I felt at the time and what was needed. And when my second one was 3 years old, so at this point, it's almost 7 years since I stopped. And I wanted to kind of, get involved with some work with science. And I knew that going back to bench work was not something for me at that point. My priorities had changed. So I wanted a more fixed 9 to 5 kind of a job where I know I don't have to go back to the lab on weekends or do something with tissue culture or mice or, I had lost the appetite for that, but I wanted to work with in the science area. So I did not know how to define that. And I started looking out at different options, regulatory affairs, teaching, and tried to see if that would keep my interest going, but nothing lasted. And then I came across data science, and that was something which took on. And I devoted 2-3 years to just learning from home, and then also working with a professor at WPI nearby. And that kind of increased my confidence. Like, just online learning doesn't do it. So working on a project gave me that confidence. And then job hunting was completely, because I've never hunted for a job. So it was a first time for everything, new field, new things, but I did not, I could not use most of the skills that, people say networking and you go and meet people. And so I was not in a position to do all that. So I carved myself my own space as to how I'm going to go about doing it. And it worked for me. And finally, a very traditional way of applying for a job, went through, a job posting, applied for it, got called for an interview, multiple interviews, and now I'm working as a data scientist with Rancho Biosciences since 2020 September. So that's my story.
Thank you, Ramya. That's a lot of passion and persistence I see in every, every turn of your life. That is inspirational. Thank you. I think we have like a small brief story about everyone here. And I have a few questions written down. So if other people have questions to ask, please put them in the chat box. And so I have a couple of questions. It might not be relevant for all of you here, but if it's relevant to you and if you'd like to answer them, I would be happy to hear that. My first question was like, how did you cope not being in the workforce? Like, I know, it's like, you've been doing something, like, especially all of you have a PhD here, which is not just like a 9 to 5 job. You've been busy, like physically, mentally, and like you've been doing so much all through, and suddenly there's this gap. So like, how did you cope with not being in the active workforce?
So, yeah, Priyanka, you can.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
So for me, actually PhD helped, I would say, to be for all those sleepless nights, definitely. Where I think staying awake, I did not have a lot of help um, for my newborn or, for even the second one. Um, I think you bring in the same amount of passion if it's a choice. Like I'm sure with Rajamani and Priyanka, I think the situation was different where you didn't choose to step away from work, but the scenarios like that panned out are made you had to make that choice. So that's the difference. So I'm very curious what your answers would be. But for me, since I chose to step out of work, I knew what I was signing up for. And I think it's the journey that helps you, because I struggled to have my first child. So I think I should make that very clear. So, I really struggled to have my first one. So when you have that after a couple of years, then you know, it just your priorities switch, and these questions really don't matter at the time, I guess. So yeah, so I was the full-fledged, I wanted to be that, the super mom, as you will, for the child. So I think PhD kind of gave me that energy, because I was morning till night, I was on my feet, and I would do all kinds of things with my daughter. And that energy kind of drove me. And I seriously did not miss being in the workforce till my second one was born. um, I think it was just a choice I made. So, it was very easy. It never bothered me that I'm not working or I want to get back into science or do something for myself. I think at that point, I think when my eldest one was 6 or 7 and my youngest was 3, um, I think that slowly came in. I could feel that I wanted to do more than that, just this. And I think for the sake of my own kids who have never seen their mom work, it was, they just could not understand that, I used to work before they were born. So I think it became a need in many ways for me to prove myself. And so it kind of coincided. And they were growing up. They were kind of, when they started school, I would find a lot of time on my hands during the daytime. And so that was when I started thinking maybe I can do something during that time when they're away, and then be available when they're back. So that's my take on that.
Thank you.
I can add to it. So I would say, like for me, even though the break wasn't what I wanted, I was sort of building up for it. I knew this was going to come. So a little bit of backstory for that, for my thought process was, I started my PhD in 2014 and I finished in exactly 4 years. So I started in August 2014, I finished in August 2018. So the biggest drive was I just want to get out of there. There was no other drive other than that at that point. The reason being that is I met with an accident, a motor vehicle accident, right after I moved to Connecticut for my PhD. This was in Thanksgiving of 2014. So I had a lot of health issues, and I had to figure out a thesis lab, and then I have to juggle coursework, and all of this was going on. My husband was in Maryland, so it was a lot of things that I had to figure out. And I thought the PhD mentor would be very supportive, so I choose someone who will give me some flexibility. And things were going fine for my first 2 years, I would say. And then third year is funding started dropping. So then all these reality stuck in, and I had like postdocs, and I was the only international in the per se in the department itself at that point. Everyone else graduated. And in my lab, I had like white male. And the reason I stress that fact is my PI preferred them over me. at every instance. And I used to work in an electrophysiology lab. So my postdoc basically said, like, when the funding was running down, he said, like, you know what, I'm going to do the experiments. I'm not going to share the equipment. So I literally did not have any equipment to do my PhD, and made a big deal about it. And my advisor was like, oh, you know what, and I was also doing physical therapy, and the stress level was really high. So I had to continue physical therapy till end of my PhD, because I had to compensate for all the accident issues that I had along with the PhD. So if I don't do physical therapy, my body was going bad and I need to focus on my health. So my advisor's suggestion was, you know what, he's working, he comes at 7 and he'll leave at 5. Why don't you work after that? And there was literally no option. I was like looking at him like blank eyes. I'm like, are you like serious? And he's like, do you have a problem with it? I was like, you are, as international, I want to say a lot of things, but you really cannot say. And I know at that day that I'm not going to get any help from him. So I pushed through my PhD. And when they did the immigration thing again on me, I know this was going to like, crash on me like really bad. So in that sense, I was very prepared. So by right when he said this word from his mouth came, I also started looking for alternative careers, because by that time I know I cannot deal with this. I already worked 2 years, like all day, night, from like 2 in the afternoon till like 11 or 2 in the morning. So that's a lot of pressure on your body. And I know I want to get out of bench science, which will not happen without networking. So I started taking a lot of volunteer opportunities. I was as an editor for Club Sci, and then I was working as an illustrator for Knowing Neurons. I don't know. I was working as a Women in Bio volunteer for a program of theirs, and then I was in Healthcare Women Business Women Association. I was working with Science Magazine in DC. So there were like 10 or 12 jobs that I simultaneously started doing as volunteer positions. So that's what ended up getting me my postdoc. And I was very picky, or I would say like that experience gave me what I really wanted to do. And I also say like what I really wanted to stay away from. I wanted to stay away from academia no matter what. And even the one postdoc that I got, I said I want to talk to the international office in their university. When I did not get response within 24 hours, or like wishy-washy answers, I said this is not going to work, because immigration is going to already process started getting delayed at that point. So if you don't have an office who's being support, I don't see the point in continuing there. So that's how I make that transition. And with my second one, after pregnancy, COVID hit, like right after my delivery, COVID hit. So again, it was like a totally different set of challenges that we were dealing with. And I had a newborn. FDA had a flexibility policy that if you can take time off, if you want to like take care of daycare or breastfeeding or all of that, but you can compensate on earlier time, which meant that my boundaries for home and work was like very small. Like I used to put my son to sleep and then I'll start working. So that was also like having some trigger issues. And I had an emergency C-section. So I had a lot of bleeding, and I had like a whole series of health issues since then. I have not fully recovered. So that added to it. So at that point, I was like, I felt like most labs that I work with put the result over your health, because that's what they're looking for. So my health was not their priority. So I felt like my health should be my priority. So I started, when she offered me a position saying like, do you want to give this project to the other person? I was like, yes, like I would get any help that I want. But it backfired on me, because she was like, now we are willing to give away before you won't give away. So this was like, the way that it turned out on you. So again, I know that the second career break is coming, but this time I was not like doing any volunteer anything, because I wanted to focus on me and my son, and get my health issues recovered. So a recruiter, like she was just constantly asking me, I think this position will be really nice. What do you think? What do you think? So that's how I pushed it. And I see a lot of flexibility in the job. And I clearly told them that I have a toddler and he might get sick like more often than I anticipate. So, I will have to work on a flexible time schedule. So all this will be discussed before I signed the offer. So it has been so far going good.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through all these things, but I think it's just like a basic right to like have equipment and stuff to work. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain these things to people, I guess. But that's exactly what made me like leave my postdoctoral job, because I was in the middle of my green card and I wasn't having any visa. But it just went like so much that, again, the same thing. Like, so she was pushing me so much. that, like work all the time because I might get pregnant and I might need a maternity leave during my delivery, which was not even in the plan at that time, but she was like, you can just work the like now and then maybe take time for your delivery when you have a baby. And I was like, wow. I mean, I have been working, I've been doing stuff, but again, as like I told you, and there was like this a lot of this subtle, like not so subtle, like racism and sexism and stuff. Like she on my face told me like, I can advertise here, but I only get like Indian and Chinese applicants. And I was like, you are saying that to me? Like, what am I supposed to, like, what am I supposed to like reply or something? And a lot of those stuff was like way like, she was mad at me because I labeled the pages as 2, 4, 6. And she was like, where is 3? And I was like, is this really happening? Because like, she was like, how would someone find a 3? And I was like, if they can't find the page is going to be 3 between 2 and 4, they shouldn't probably be in the lab, like I was like stunned because I couldn't explain like what am I supposed to say. And she was like, you don't use like different color pens. And I was like, what am I actually like, am I doing like a a kid's project or something? Like I have everything written down. And at one point it was like crazy because I mean I didn't know what to do. Like she wrote me like your book, your lab notebook is like what do you call it? It's not like a postdoctoral person's lab notebook. It's like it's on the basis of date. And I was like, how else do you want me to write? Like, can I maintain different notebooks for different projects? Even then I'm going to do like simultaneous like work, right? So I have to write based on the date. Or do you want me to like include loose sheets? She was like, no, I want you to write on the notebook, but it should be experiment wise. Then I was like, okay, I can do a cloning, wait until that gets like successful, and then do the next experiment maybe, because that is like I really didn't have an answer for her. And kind of like I had to leave, like that wasn't planned. So yeah, that kind of like triggered so much for me, and I had to like take a step back and really think through this. Like, do I really want to go through all these things? And by then I had like so much of like stress related issues and stuff like that. So I mean, I don't know what would have happened if I had my pregnancy in that lab. Like, and another thing that I noticed is like it is hard to say how your pregnancy is going to go because you yourself don't know. So a lot of times they want you to commit to something like, can you finish all these before you go for your like maternity leave or something? I'm like, I mean, I wasn't pregnant, so I didn't realize at that time. But I've seen a lot of these posts on STEMPeers, right? Like, I'm getting pregnant, so I'm trying to do this, and then
So
like they
I
have
plan for my maternity, which sounds stupid, but yeah, we did have
yeah.
a plan that we had to finish the project before, give a first draft to her and she'll be working on the manuscript while I'm on away. And also, like I have to mention that a lot of postdocs don't have a paternity package, so mine was unpaid leave. So I wanted to take 3 months, so I took 3 months, but I was always nudged after like 6 weeks. When are you coming back? When are you coming back? Like every week. And even like some of them offered me that, oh, you should bring back your parents and they should help you out. And it's in the middle of COVID. Nobody was knowing what's going on in the world. So it was just like, for them to get the work done, I felt like they were getting very nitpicky. So there were like instances here and there that I could pick that these things may not work out. But it went down slow pretty quick after that.
But I think that gave us sort of a clarity of what is our priorities and what to look for in the next, jobs or things, I guess, right? Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit. Am I audible? I think the net has stopped in some. Okay.
Yeah.
So I wasn't prepared for a break actually. So the day I gave the PhD defense in the evening, I did the pregnancy test and we realized that I was pregnant and the vomiting was all related to that. And so that was kind of a little bit like, now what? Because I was like just finished PhD, I'm going to go for a postdoc, I'll be done with everything. And so for some time it was like, okay, I don't know what to do next. So I had spoken to my guide. I remember telling that you have to take certain milestones in your life. If you need to take a break, not an issue. So she kind of gave me that support, my PhD guide. So, then I got the confidence that, yeah, I better take a break. And once the kid was there, then I didn't want to go back. So it shifted priority on the day when I had tested for the pregnancy. The PhD went into the background completely. It was more the pregnancy and the child going to come and things like that. And we started planning related to that. So it completely took a backseat, my PhD. So it was somewhere there. Okay, I have done a PhD, but I really don't care. The child came first. But I was lucky to get back into the field. And now it is a bit irritating to take a break because I was like at a good point in my career. And I keep thinking, if it had not happened, the stroke, which I had to take a break for, probably I would have been with some collaborations. We were in the talks for collaboration and a lot of things were happening at that time, but everything happens for the good. So maybe something else also, yeah. So just taking things like Ramya said, as it comes is what I'm doing now. And shifting, of course, from bench work. I think I'll be also moving more into bioinformatics, data science. So yeah, I think Shiva is.
I think Shiva lost the connection.
Yeah, there's a question for Ramya, I guess.
So, yeah, that is actually a big point, Nupur. That was a huge challenge because when I started to look for what do I do, like after 7 years, and I think by the time I got my job, it was 10 years. So it's a 10-year break officially. But the seventh year, I came across data science through a paper where, it was basically doing the same science. It was a machine learning project, which kind of used, so the concept was so nice. I said, oh, you're not doing bench work, but you're coming to these observations just based on data. And so that way I just started looking into what that was. And I realized that you need a lot of math, computer science, physics, somewhere in that intersection, which I didn't have any of. Maybe statistics a little bit because thanks to the PhD, but nowhere near the kind of depth that's needed for learning data science like machine learning or any such thing. So I took baby steps. Started off with actually Khan Academy and going over basic statistics, things that which we never got to use in the PhD. Like we stuck to certain parts of statistics, but not in entirety. So I refreshed all that. And what I quickly realized was there was a huge bridge to gap. Like people who have made the transitions are usually from neurobiology, like neurosciences, who have made it into data science, but not really from like a wet lab, hardcore bench scientist who has just done pure biology to data science. I never met anyone. Wasn't sure if it was my networking skill, but I really didn't meet anyone who did that transition. So it is still an ongoing transition, I would say, because though I'm labeled as a data scientist in the company, I haven't really started building machine learning models, which I trained for, but I have made my peace because, I felt happy that I was able to get back into the workforce. I enjoyed doing what I was doing. And you need to kind of build up that experience to kind of have people trust you with that kind of a job also. Like I can't really expect someone to give me that after a 10-year break. So I knew my limitations and I was ready for the journey. And, I think you kind of, you know where to go, you have a goal, and you just make sure you take one step a day towards in the right direction. And I think that's what matters. You may not start where you want to be, but you just make sure you keep moving in that direction, right? So so right now I'm doing a lot of data curation, data wrangling. I'm also doing data management. So I'm learning different aspects of the business and also a little bit of machine learning. So I keep myself, and it intrigues me because I've never worked in a biotech or a pharma thing, and my clients are all pharma companies. So I'm learning a lot, which I've never, in areas that have never been part of my exposure. So um, I like that. So I haven't really planned how this is going to be. I like doing what I'm doing right now. And at some point, I also hope to start working fully on machine learning or AI. And I keep learning on the side apart from the job, and that keeps me moving. So that's how my transition is happening. I won't say it has already happened. So in that aspect. Um, but I feel I'm in the right space. I have the company is great. The people are great. They encourage you, and they're all kind of PhDs who are kind of like us, which is the other thing I noticed was many people did this transition in this company. Most of them are from the neurosciences, but that's okay because I get to interact with them and kind of learn from them. But there are also people who are like us, hardcore biologists who just made this, learned some programming, R coding, and then just doing a data wrangling or curation, like a small project. But I think the important thing is to, just keep yourself motivated and inspired to understand that, everyone learns something new every day, and this is just my journey. So as long as you think about it that way, I think you can make it. And I really feel that when I got the job offer, I think for the first couple of months, it was surreal. And I felt like if I can do it, then anyone can. So, because a 10-year break is huge. And, mind you, in those 10 years, I never did anything related to science. It was completely, I was like that mom, stay-at-home mom, doing everything that I wanted to do. So I enjoyed every bit of it. And looking back, I'm glad I did, because those years are not going to come back. My time with those children are not really something that I can go back. And they're growing up. So I think you should enjoy every day. And like somebody said, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So just to kind of, soften it, it's not really lemons. It can be really, really bad. I know that. But, there is a plan. And as long as you identify what that plan is and move in the direction that your heart is telling you to, I think you can make the transition.
Okay, thank you.
I hope
Sorry, my internet disconnected in between, so I think I did not listen to that. Was that about the question that I asked?
No, it was something from the chat. Sorry,
Okay.
I was just answering something from the chat. I still.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So, yeah, I think regarding the projects, I think somebody is asking the kind of projects that I do right now. So my company is a data service company. We have a lot of, almost 40 of the big pharma who are our clients. So I am actually now working with Roche Genentech. So we deal with clinical data, we deal with assay data, we kind of deal with all kinds of data related to clinical trials. And we kind of, so there's data wrangling, curation, data governance, all involved in the kind of work that I'm doing. There's an end-to-end platform also that I'm working with digital pathology. So, getting how the images are coming from the CRO and all the way to how it's loaded for research pathologists to analyze. So these are certain aspects. So what my science helps me do is to appreciate what kind of metadata is needed, or I can kind of recommend of, what kind of data sets can be made and what is important for the research and pathologists to see, analyze, and make their own studies. So I get to be a part of all that entire process. So It's more like, yeah, it's not research science, because where I don't get to have a say in what needs to be done, but I can appreciate the data. And I feel that more than the bench science, in data science, what I really liked is the feeling that you're contributing to something. It's more real here, because when I deal with patient IDs or numbers, I know that, I don't want to mess up even one entry, because I know it's a patient, it's someone somewhere whose data or tissue or piece of them is being represented in that row or column. And so it becomes more real. Whereas in a bench science, I constantly, we used to tell ourselves that we are contributing to science, but I can't see the big picture. Whereas in this, it becomes really, I feel that way it's more rewarding. Like I can actually say or tell, or I can see where this research is going to and how it's affecting people. So it becomes more real.
Yeah, thank you. I, for some reason, can't see the messages. Are there any messages? Okay, it just started coming. I had an internet disconnection right now, and for some reason, my phone wouldn't connect as well. I don't know. Like, it has to happen at this time, right? So sorry, I had to, yeah, briefly get off of this. Okay. Are there any questions that aren't answered? Because I can only see a thank you from Nupur. If it is there, yeah, we can go ahead with that. Or I have
on how is it that you could keep up the pace and demands of the current job market. So speaking for myself, I'm not keeping up with the pace or demands right now with my current job, because I have a toddler at home. And that being said, like the job that I choose was that of nature. Like I'm like a person behind the wall. So my work is seen, I'm not seen. And like data curation, I deal with cell line data curation, and it's for different therapeutic areas across Regeneron. So this is more like an internal project of Regeneron. So the reach is like, not as a clinical trial data or anything. So I can, like, even if I'm slowed down, even if I catch up a little later, it's okay for my job right now. But for my previous jobs, I would say like, since I live in Maryland, BioBus is one of the blocks here who cover up the entire tri-state area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I used to like, go for the networking events and keep up with them, like meet people. So that's how I was keeping up at that time. This job was very specifically pick and choose for flexibility and like, first few years of my son's life, so that he can get more of me and I can get my health back. So that's the focus with this job. So not working really hard about keeping up to date with the job market itself.
great. Yeah, thank you. So, okay, we have another question. During your interview, how and would you talk about future family planning or career paths? Can you share some of your experiences, if any?
So as someone who has done it in the interview, I can jump in and pitch in here. So when I interviewed for postdoc, I think once or twice, some people like picked on me that I might get pregnant sooner or later. And they were, and I felt like the questions were very obnoxious in the sense like, are you planning? When are you going to have? So I just like, stepped out of it. I did not even move forward with the interviews. And with my postdoc, my PhD was worse. So it looks like my postdoc was worse, but my PhD was the worst experience. My postdoc mentor kind of knew because I was asking for a family insurance, that I did not want to go through my husband's insurance at that point, since we were on different state areas. So I was asking her. So she kind of figured out that, there might be some planning, but she did not question me anything. Like she asked me after I joined the program, but at that point she did not. She was just worried, and she let me know there is no maternity leave when I was interviewing for her. If in case you're planning, I just want to let you know that the postdocs are not offered much here, like except for 15 days of paid leave. So that was brought up by her. And then she also encouraged me to interview a lot before my pregnancy, before my delivery, so that I can get a job before delivery. So my first, I would say like My first time semester with morning sickness, it was horrible. So I did not apply for anything. Once I got better, I started applying my second try semester. I'm a very small person, so my belly did not show up until 38th or 39th week. So it was fine. All my interviews, I was not questioned. But when I did interviews on 39th, 40th week, the belly started showing and people started asking, what's going on? When are you going to join? If you're going to deliver, when are you going to join? So things got murky at that point, I would say. Again, I didn't proceed forward because I felt a lot of pressure with those questions itself, with those firms. And then for my regional position, my son was at home. I was at home. I had health issues and his daycare wasn't working out for him. So I did all my interviews with a screaming toddler behind my back. So again, they heard the cries, nobody questioned me. They know that I had a toddler. They just asked how old is he and what is he doing. And when I interviewed, he did not even have a daycare at that point. So they knew it. And, the only question was, will you be flexible enough to get the work done? That was the only question my manager had in mind. And that was brought up a couple of times. But other than that, I did not have an issue. Maybe it would have been if I had brought the topic and, discussed that I have a son who's blah, blah, blah of age. But because I did with the screaming toddler, I don't think there was a lot of pressure at that time. And it was also during a peak COVID phase 2. So everybody understood that all of us are working from home with kids. So it felt like, the nature of the job was like that at that period. So people took it with a little bit more grace than the usual.
Thank you, Rajamani. Ramya or Priyanka, do you want to pitch in or share your experience about this, or we can go to the next question if you.
Yeah, so, I think I did a couple of interviews when I started off. And I think my biggest problem was to tell myself that it's okay to have taken the break. Because when I started off, I started feeling like how I felt the need to kind of focus on the break myself. And, so when I would approach, if somebody would call me and they would ask me, what did I do? I would say that I took a break. And even if they didn't, I kind of volunteered that information. I think it was something to do with my mindset. So I would say that I'm coming back after a 10-year break. And then in my head, something would not seem right. I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? So the important step was to tell myself that, it was okay to have taken the break and that you don't really have to justify it to anyone. So I think that was one big turning point for me. I think a couple of people I spoke to, and they help you to get to that position. I think when I spoke to a couple of people who are working and in the industry, I quickly realized that I don't have to volunteer that information and I don't have to justify it. So I had to kind of train myself to not feel apologetic or feel the need to kind of volunteer why I did what I did, and keep it very strictly professional. I think that was a very important lesson I learned. So post that, when I did go to a couple of interviews, my experience, I don't know, I may be wrong or it's just something that happened with me, but I felt when there were women interviewers, the focus was more on the break. And I felt more comfortable talking about it because, it's a woman and you kind of assume that they'll be sympathetic. And I even had one woman interviewer actually make me talk about it. So I had trained myself to not talk about it because I just said I took a break and then I transitioned. I was looking to transition and I moved to data science. But this lady made me talk about it. She said, oh, we are all women here and we need to look out for each other. And that's a topic that gets you going. Like you kind of calm down, your defenses come down and you're like, oh, then she knows, like she's going to understand. And that backfired. So I was completely thrown off. And so again, it's like, but for me, I always looked at it as a learning experience, never took it personally, one. Second was, you're already rock bottom. Now, where else can you go? There is nothing that's changing, So I chose not to be working. I chose to be with family, and I can continue to be that way. And I was not very picky about, I knew what I'm capable of. And so, it was just for the other person to see it. So these things were what were, the drive, the things, the way you look at your situation, I think that's very important. Instead of you looking at it as a negative, if you can focus on what you can bring to the table and get the other person to look at that and remove all the, the negative coloration around the situation, I think, and bring the focus on what you are capable of doing. I think that was something that I kept telling myself. So, so conversations about family or why you took a break, I think it's very tricky. People can, I'm not saying that all of them are like that. There were some some people who were very helpful, but they were not able to give me the job for many other reasons. But it has to be carefully done. So like this woman who kind of, kind of brought you into that mode where you would open up and you're talking about this, I think you should try and stick to be more personal and just move on from that thing, is what my takeaway was with my experience. I don't know, maybe men are more sympathetic about it. I don't know. Or maybe rather more forgiving. But that was my experience when I started to interview with different people. And that was very surprising for me as well, because I didn't expect that kind of feedback. And then I think the next question about, what suggestions I have for wet lab to data science transition. One is realize that it's not easy, and pace yourself. And the thing is, I think if you can get to work on side projects that helped, like, I did one project with a professor at WPI, which was, you learn, you go to those lab meetings, you get to kind of listen in on what the other students are doing, and try to kind of soak in as much as you can, and then working on your own side projects, making up a GitHub profile where, you can showcase those projects, and you have Kaggle and all those kinds of platforms where they give you projects to work on. And if you can just do one at a time and just add it to your GitHub profile, it also increases your confidence in how much you know about the field. And at the same time, I think also keep your mindset pretty open that, there's more to it. That at least for me, I always feel that I haven't learned enough. There's more to it and I need to learn that. So if you have that, I think you're always open to anything that you don't know. And if you can say that also, that, I don't know this, but I'm willing to learn, I think that's good. And if people still can't take you, I think that's fine. I think you just deserve someone better in terms of, even employers. And I just feel that you should not sell yourself short for the sake of a job, because it's a long-term commitment. Somehow I've been lucky that way, when I'm hearing Rajamani and Priyanka, Shiva talk about your professors, I really was thinking about the professor for me when I was a postdoc. He was extremely good. And I still connect with him, we still chat. But I think that's important, that kind of a relation, you don't have to be so good, but as long as they let you live your life, I think that's good enough. So, so don't sell yourself short. I would suggest, believe in yourself, and just keep taking one small step at a time and you will get there.
lot of good points. Thank you, Ramya. I think I need a lot of these. I'm going to think through all these. Thank you. Yeah, so we don't have any more questions here, so I'll go to my questions that I have. So I wanted to ask, like, I'm not sure if it's relevant to all of you, but if it is, you can answer. So did you have like someone or a group of people with whom you can like relate to or talk about your experiences, like, like, I don't know, like with a childcare or like trying to, when you have a kid and trying to leave the kid at home or daycare or whatever that is. So did you have people who you can talk to and they could relate to you or you could relate to them? Or like, did you have like a lot of support in that case? Because personally, for me, I feel like I have either like in my cousin set or someone, it's either like you have a baby now, your career can wait to shut up and do this. Or on the other side, it's like, like what? The career is so much important to me, I want to do that. I'm not trying to judge either of them, but I'm in a place where, I am like, it's not that I don't want to be with my baby or anything, but at the same time, it's more of my mental health as well, because I want to be a person who my kid can look up to, or I want to be happy myself. So there's like always this gap, because none of my cousins have actually had their kids go to a daycare or something. So like, even I can't even talk that topic, because it's kind of like you want to leave it, it's like you're abandoning your kid or something, you know what I mean? So a lot of times I just kind of have to like think about it myself, because when I try to talk to people, it's like I can't relate to them or they can't relate to me, it's that kind of stuff. Or I have some people who are like working from home and they have like a total different you know aspect of child rearing, because they can kind of like, both of them work from home, so they kind of can manage your stuff like that. So it's a little different when you want to go back, like especially to like research or like wet lab research, where you can do much from home, and it's not that like a flexible kind of an atmosphere. So did you have people who you could lean in on, or like how did you find your tribe?
So I basically, with the whole childcare, I really didn't really have anybody who was in that supportive thing. But there were friends who were not PhDs, but they too had a career gap because of a child. So I could relate with them, and they too wanted to get back to work. And surprisingly, right now, when I have come, we just shifted to Bangalore a couple of months back. And so I am right now kind of in a break. And it's weird that people don't even ask what you are doing. They just assume you are at home the whole day, you are a housewife, nothing else. So it's like they're not even asking me what I have done, or do I work, or do I have what I have studied. So I'm like, people over here, at least it's like, okay, she's a housewife, taken for granted she's a housewife, nothing else. So that kind of hits you that, they're not even curious to know what you are doing or why you are a housewife, why you are at home. Except for, I think, one lady, she didn't ask me anything, but in the middle, okay, tell me your story. Why the hell are you at home? You don't seem like the type to be at home. Then I told, otherwise, nobody has really. They've just assumed I'm babysitting, sitting at home, doing nothing. So, yeah. But I get what the support is a little less, unless you have somebody going to the same kind of situation. Like the PhDs, when I passed out from my PhD, when I was doing it, there were 5 of us doing it together. So all of them had joined somewhere, and it was only me who was on the break. So they would keep telling me, yeah, it's okay. But in the heart somewhere, you do feel bad that, you haven't achieved it. But I enjoyed that 2 years that I took a break with my child. No regrets on that. And I got a chance to come back into academia. So I was happy. And yeah, as in the support, you need to find somebody. Otherwise, it's alone dealing. It can get difficult. I know that.
I actually like the you're just babysitting and doing nothing part, because it's such an oxymoron, like you do nothing, just babysitting. I'm like, right.
Yeah.
So Shiva, you can feel free to talk to me because I'm on the same boat. I don't have any extended family, both sides. Like for 2 generations, nobody sent anyone to daycare. My son would be the first one who touched a daycare at 6.5 months, and people are like cursing me for putting him in a daycare. So I get it, and also
I'm
again
moving to
pandemic.
Maryland now.
Yeah,
I'm moving to
and
Maryland now, right next to your house.
yeah. So also because of pandemic, I couldn't meet any fellow moms in the area as well. When I moved to Maryland, I had all these OPT issues at that point. So I had friends, but no, they were not couple or nobody had kids at that point. They are now just now after COVID, they're all getting married. So yeah, now I have couple friends, but back then it was just single friends at that point. So yeah, I didn't have any fellow moms or anything like bouncing ideas. What do I need to do? Like how do I start solids? All those simple things. I really did not have much external support. My support comes from my FTA colleagues or gone through the same thing, but I also felt like, as Ramya mentioned, they tend to like make it softer, and then they'll break your defense and they'll be like, oh, tell your story, and then they'll hit you backfire on you, and they'll be like, oh, I know your son didn't go to daycare, that's why you didn't finish this work today. So I felt like there was a lot of that backfiring happening after some point. And they used to give you great suggestions on what things to buy for your child, and if you say like this doesn't work for my son, they'll be like, did you try harder? Like, some things you can try harder, some things you just have to let go. So I also feel the same way. Like there are not a lot of people who connect with me on like-mindedness. Um, but I also kept putting out there are like a lot of moms group in the area where they host like parks or weekday night outs and all of those things. I tried like enrolling for all of it, and then my son would get sick, so I could never make it to any of it. So it's just us at this point. And then one thing that I would say was one of the reasons when I was looking for a job, I was not even looking actively because I was okay with getting a career break at that point. I thought I'll focus on me and gives me more time with my son, so I was okay at that sense. So I would say like when this regional offer came in, I wanted it to be very specifically. I told them if it's the remote job, I'll go ahead and interview. If it's not a remote job, you want me to come into an office, I'm not interviewing, because that was like one of my break or deal moment at that point. Like I did not want to travel too far because then I have all these issues with daycare. I have to manage time and everything, and I don't have my family here, which means it falls on us. My husband is not available to help during daytime, so I know all of it. So I made it very clear I'm not moving forward, even for like I did not even pass my resume until they said it was a remote position. So I changed my priorities based on my needs. I'm happy where I am. It gives me a lot of space, and I spend a lot of time with my son, which I would not have done it before. So I would say like in the end it turned out okay, but I also would say like don't sell yourself short, just like Ramya mentioned. I was very very picky after my my PhD that what I want, and I also was clear like what I do not want. Like I wouldn't even waste my time like sending a CV or something if I know this was not going to pan out. Because I felt like with a newborn at home all by yourself, you need the time to figure out other things. If I'm just working on a CV and going through a round of interviews that I may not pick up, I was not going to waste my time to begin with. So I was like getting very very focused on my priorities and like listing it out. Um, so that's one thing that has helped me through the transitions. But yeah, if you want to talk, I'm here. You know how to find me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so for me, actually, I wouldn't say for me I had any kind of outside family circle. Yes, I had friends, but they were not in science or anything. And mostly I associated myself with stay-at-home moms with 2 kids, right? So I'm taking them out for play dates and everything. So um, it wasn't we but most of them were also kind of all educated, have taken a setback because of they wanted to be at home with the kids and all that. But so one thing that they gave me was the feeling that it's okay. It's not like it's not a it's which is why I never questioned the decision of leaving the job, because I was completely happy with it. But when I wanted to get back, in terms of motivation, I can think of a couple of friends, but I think it was mostly my husband, because I think that's very important. the support that you get in your home front is definitely, your friends and anyone else can probably tell you that you can do it, and you probably need to hear more of it from outside. But the reality is, when you step inside your house, your situation, your scenario, every scenario is different. Every family is different. So what works for you and your family may not work for others. So even for me, like not wanting to leave my child in daycare was a choice because of my journey. If I had not had any problems in having my first child, I would have probably left her in daycare and would not have thought so much about it. But it's unfair to because I have a few people who kind of point out to me and say that especially the elderly generation, who say that okay, she has taken, look at her, she took time off for the sake of her child. But it's unfair to compare that and make others feel guilty, because I feel that was purely what I went through. And what I went through before that is something what drove the whole decision, right? So it would have turned out very differently had I not gone through that experience. So it is unfair to do that. And what I feel is, at the end of the day, a mother does know what the child wants, and what's important. And we are not raising kids for a generation that's 10 years old. It's going to be a different generation. And my motivation, one of the things was, I wanted my daughters to actually see me and understand that you can have both. You can do your family. It's life is not just about career, and at the same time, it's not just about family either. It's a mix of both. And you pick your cards at the right time, and you prioritize what is at that given phase of your life. So I wanted my kids to grow up knowing that their mother has been there for them for close to 6-7 years at least. And now they are my biggest cheerleaders of, when I have a project deadline or something, they're there, and they have been involved with my career transition. They have been involved with my career reentry. So they understand that, and they know how it's important for me. So hopefully, I don't know, I believe that when they grow up, they'll be women who are better than where I came from, where it was so hard for me to let go. And, I chose to step away from work. I hope they are more stronger than I am when they grow up, because they have, it's always you look back, right? So I come from a family where my mother never worked, and probably that influenced me. I don't know. So I just wanted, it's a different generation every year, and I don't see women not wanting to work. That's just something completely old-fashioned. It's not the case. But if you want to stay at home, I feel it should be a woman's choice, right? You want to do either, it should be completely empowered by them. So having said that, the support though I feel has to come mostly from within your family, because they are the people who are going to be holding things up, holding the fort up when you step out. So for me, my husband was my biggest support. That was my complete strength, I would say. Then my dad, though my parents were not here for childcare, or I've never left them in a daycare to date. They have been at home all the time. But my father and my mother were like the biggest cheerleaders, so just getting to know, or giving you ideas of what works for you, I think it just comes from your family, because my parents understand my setup. They can solve my issues. They can give suggestions that work for me. With a friend, the friend, it depends on how close you are and how much they understand your scenario, or how much they understand your family setup. If you do have that kind of friends, great. I do have some friends like that, but at the same time, they are not from science. So, you don't have everything. But I do have friends who were very supportive during this time. And just getting to hear from outside the family, that was very important for me, to say that, we have met so-and-so people, and we are seeing you, and I think you can do it, so that's like because your family always looks at you. They're either, you're always too good for them, you're always the best, but you need a little bit of critical review, and you need a little bit of that salt and pepper thing, right? So you need to know the reality. And I think friends helped that way, to kind of say that, listen, I have met so many other people, but I'm really telling you that you're good, you can do this. So that kind of gives you a really good realistic affirmation than, your mom telling you that you are the best. So I think that was very helpful for me. But I strongly feel that it's your family that you should look for support, because the support is mostly somebody holding the fort. In my case, I was, when I stepped out, I wanted to know that what I struggled hard for 10 years was to have a family setup, which I had created, and I didn't want that crumbling down just because I decided to work. So that feeling, that comfort comes from the fact that you have that, you're on the same page with your partner, right? So.
Thank you, Ramya. So I think that was the question Shubha Bevkal also had. Did you meant to ask something different, Shubha? If so, you can let us know, or if this answers your question, then we can wrap up. Great. So yeah, I think I have so many questions, but we are almost there at the end of the session. So if you could each share like a tip or a suggestion or some kind of words of wisdom, maybe to people who are going to get a break or going through the break or coming back after a break, what would it be?
So I'll just quickly say that if you are going through a break, enjoy the break for whatever reason it is, because since you're already on a break and you have no choice, right? Make it count. So just enjoy the journey. And, you don't want to be like, I'm here, I don't have a job, and you keep complaining about it, and the time just passes by. And then eventually you will get a job at some point. But then now you've lost this time. So enjoy the break for whatever reason it is. And after the break, when you're trying to get back, be ready for setbacks. Don't take it personally. Things will happen. Things will be, people will talk. You'll meet all kinds of people, but be assured that, you have, for not just a PhD, any education for that matter, you're educated, you are an adult, you are where you are, you have made some choices, and it cannot be that bad. I just keep telling myself, you meet all kinds of people, and then you kind of think, your journey, what you have been through and what you have studied, and especially PhD, the kind of rigorous days that we have been through. After all that, I used to feel that it counts for something. You are capable of doing something. Define or try to find out what that is, what your strong points are. Focus on those things. And, I think I spoke to Raghu Raghunathan from STEMPeers. I am not very good at networking. I don't meet a whole lot of people. I'm not an extrovert that way. But I had to change. I had to reach out to absolute strangers and talk to them. And I was stepping out of my comfort zone. And it was not easy, but then I slowly kind of decided to do it my way. And networking is important, but it's easier when you have a job to network rather than go about it when you don't. It doesn't feel that genuine to me. So I kind of changed the way I network to suit my needs. So what I'm trying to say is that, you will get to hear a lot of suggestions about how you should go about doing anything when you're doing reentry. But if you want it to work, I think you should do it the way that it feels comfortable to you. So For example, with networking, when everyone said you have to go out and meet people and, networking events, I said it just doesn't work for me. So I kind of changed it the way I wanted to be. I necessarily did not follow those rules, but I understood how networking worked, and made a promise to myself that when I do get a job, I will network, because then it just came more easier when you are working. Because I was, I am a people person. I do get along well with people, but not with this pressure of, I'm looking for a job and I would like to know this person. I'm not good at it. So it just didn't work for me that way. I relied on previous relations, like, friends that I had even before I started all this career reentry. I was more comfortable reaching out to those people. So that was just me. And so, which is why I said, and that was much easier. That kind of networking was easier for me. So change things to your personality and the way you would like to do it. And at the end of the day, the story is still the same. Like, you have a break, you have some strong things to bring to the job front and showcase that, and focus just on that, not on the break. That's all I have.
Wonderful suggestion. Thank you, Ramya.
I'd like to just say that keep an open mind after your break. Many a times your priorities change. So probably you would want to focus on your strength and prioritize when you are applying or when you going back into your career on your strength and things like that. Don't fall short, as in don't compromise on your this thing. Just figure out what are your strengths. And I think it should be fine to get a job in that field, whichever one you choose. Yeah.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add to Priyanka's suggestion that keep yourself open and flexible, because your priorities do change. And when it's a career change because of, family or visa situation, you tend to like move away from what you're interested in. In my case, it was I wanted to be like an advocacy or policy, and it was very hard for international students to get into that field. So I did a lot of legwork and volunteer work in that aspect. But once I had my baby, I know, like, the money that it comes through and the daycare and all of those expenses and the amount of work I have to put in for that career, it won't fit my current needs. So that's when, like, I started looking for what else I can do. And that I would say, like, keep your priorities straight, both in personal and professional side, what you want and what you do not want. And I feel like the bigger challenge for most of us, like, who have PhDs, is like we talking negative about ourselves too. I'm coming back from a break, what am I going to say? Like, what if I have to do this? So I would say, like, try not to have those negative thoughts lingering in your brain for too long, because that's what is going to inhibit you more than promoting you. And another suggestion that I had was do the recruiter on thing on LinkedIn. That's what I had during my maternity break, and seriously, after maternity break, I just forgot to turn it off. So I just kept coming. All the recruiters just kept on in mailing me, and then I just used to look at it, and if it was something interesting, I would like, approach them, or else I would just ignore. But that was like a good way of being in a passive job search, and that actually helped me get my current position. So that's like another tip for networking and job searching.
Great. Thank you, Rajamani. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Priyanka, for being with us this late. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone. This was a wonderful session, and I hope a lot of you have gained insights into career break and resuming career after the break. So yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day. And Priyanka, good night. Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.